I don't want a pickle, just want to ride on my motorcycle. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the Noco Moto Podcast, episode number 281, I think. I'm your host, MotoGP. With me is your other host, Swiggy.
Yep.
Coming to you from Moto One Podcast Network Studios, recording Suite A, otherwise known as the Tiki Room. Let's see. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about motorcycle tuning today, or why you shouldn't tune your motorcycle, or why you might want to, and what you're going to do about that. We're going to do best worst bike in the world this week. And Swigs, you want to talk about motorcycle lighting, specifically recent improvements in, or possible improvements in
A particular bike,
but perhaps has industry-wide
a step in the right direction, I'll say.
perhaps, hopefully. Okay. And let's see here. Swigs, you missed out. Last Tuesday, Weird Al at Red Rocks. You missed out. It was so good. I don't know. You should have spent the money. It was absolutely worth it. Everything. He sang Fat, full fat suit.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the full suit.
Nice.
So worth it. So worth. Oh, so many costume
But do you mean
changes.
Eat It?
No. Eat It and Fat are two different songs.
Oh, okay. I don't know Fat, actually.
It was like it was the first like really big hit. I think it was sort of the plot of the Weird Al Yankovic story where his agent calls him up and he's like, Al, Michael Jackson's made a parody of Fat. It's called Bad. And he's like devastated. It might be Beat It or Eat It. It's one of the two. But yeah, it's so
No,
good.
yeah, Eat It is the parody of Beat It.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but Fat's the parody of Bad.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they flipped it for the movie, and Weird Al becomes
Right,
devastated
okay.
because Michael Jackson parodied his song. It's so good. Anyway, yeah, you missed out. It was great. We were in costume. It was fantastic. If anyone has the chance to go see Weird Al on the rest of his tour this year, you're just doing it wrong if you don't go and you have the opportunity, is what I'm going to say. All right, let's not waste any time. Let's get into best worst bike in the world this week. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is the part of the show where Swigs and I have each chosen a motorcycle. We don't know what each other have chosen. It's always a surprise. One is going to be the best bike in the world this week. One is going to be the worst. Remember, it's only just for this week. If you agree, disagree, care, don't care, you can either call us out on your own podcast or you can send an email to where, Swigs?
Contact at nocomotopodcast.com.
That's right. Or you can send us a text if you are listening to this podcast in its audio format. Or you can join the Patreon and send us a message there. Or you can join the Discord and talk to us there. Let's see, Swigs. You have worst bike in the world this week.
I do.
And are you ready to reveal it?
I am.
All right. Let me get a little sip of zombie here while we... And the worst bike in the world this week is?
The 1992 to 2001 Moto Guzzi Quota.
Do I know the Quota? I don't think I know this bike. If this is half as good as the Centaur or the Centauro.
Design-wise, aesthetically, it's not that bad, but it's still not great.
Oh, it's kind of a proto TT85 a little bit.
You mean V85, but yes.
That's what I meant, V85, yeah.
So this is the bike that preceded the Stelvio.
No, it's the TT85, isn't it?
It's just the V85.
No, they're adventure bike.
It's the V85.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's the TT85.
I'm gonna pull this up. I'm checking. I'm fact checking you on this right now. Okay. There is a TT model of the V85 called the V85 TT.
Oh,
but
okay.
it is not the TT85.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. All right. So anyway, this bike has vibes of the V85.
It does. What it does not have is any kind of competency whatsoever. So, again, this bike started production in 1992. And this kind of followed the BMW formula of, we're not going to compromise on our general philosophy. So this is going to be a transverse V-twin. It's going to have a shaft drive, but we're going to try and turn it into a adventure bike, and we're going to put premium technology in it. And this proved to be disastrous.
Well, premium technology in a Moto Guzzi is a trick that apparently they've only just now been able to pull off. So yeah,
well, by
bad
premium
omens already.
So at this point, by premium technology, what I really mean is
Fuel injection
and a monoshock. So this was basically designed to be an adventure bike. This has 70 horsepower and 60 foot-pounds of torque. It weighs 600 pounds. And honestly, I couldn't even find a number for the actual ground clearance other than people saying that it was wildly insufficient.
Okay, sure. But, I mean, it definitely looks like, okay. We say that, these adventure bikes that they're coming out with today are really more just for cruising the highways, back roads, occasional fire roads, and some light trail kind of stuff. But the truth is that's been the case for a very long time. So maybe this is one of those early bikes where Guzzi was like, well, yeah, it's more road-oriented than off-road, obviously. But, this will go down a dirt or gravel road easier than most bikes.
True, but at least modern bikes have... at least modern adventure bikes, as much as they're oversized and overspec'd, at least do have things like ground clearance and a respectable horsepower to weight ratio.
I do have to say, this doesn't look any higher off the ground than a CB750.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, not only that, I looked it up. The horsepower to weight ratio of this bike is something like 2.88 horsepower per kilogram. The cutoff for a A2 license in terms of horsepower to weight ratio is 2.7 horsepower per kilogram. And it's only like for an Australian restricted license, this is only like 110 to 120% of the horsepower to weight ratio limit.
For the A2 license?
Well, for Australia, it's the Lambs, but for the A2, it's like just barely outside. Like, this is not a lot of power. And
well,
any
you say that, but weight doesn't affect top speed. And you said 60 horsepower?
It's 70 horsepower.
70. So we're probably getting a little over 55 at the back wheel through that shaft drive.
Something like that, yeah.
So it's going to do 100 miles an hour, and it's a Guzzi, and you said it was like, what, 60, 50 foot-pounds torque, somewhere in there?
60, yeah.
60 is a good number.
Right.
So it's got the Moto Guzzi mid-range power promise. Do you know what the RPM is for max torque?
I'm not sure. I know it kicks on early-ish. Actually, for this generation of Moto Guzzi, it doesn't actually kick in that early.
And-
It's like it kicks in at like 3,500 RPM.
And is this the Le Mans 1100 or 1000 motor?
I believe this motor is modified and it's a little bit different. But this is way after those bikes. I'm sure it's got.
They were making them into the late 80s, weren't they? And
I'm sure it shares some DNA, and it is, you know, a 1000 to 1100, you know, 2-valve V twin. So probably it shares quite a bit, but I'm pretty sure it's modified for this bike in particular.
Sure, but okay. So air cooled, all that kind of stuff. Okay, 70
So here's the other
horsepower.
thing: is this is at a time when Guzzi was less popular than it is now, and they were shipping these over to the U.S. when they went up to the 1100 in the later years, and these bikes, they shipped them over, and there was a colossal error made with these in the process, in that they didn't actually set up the ECUs for the fuel injection on these for a lot of bikes, and they were absolute dog shit for US customers. And because, you know, in Italy, they're like, well, we can't send you new ECUs or equipment to program the ECUs.
Yeah, it's June. Yeah.
It's August. We closed the factory down. Call back in January.
Right.
And the situation got so bad, and people got so desperate trying to make these bikes usable again, that people modified these bikes and started putting carburetors on them.
This would have been, yeah, I mean, I guess this is like in an era where, I mean, it's weirdly like a bit easier, I guess, around this time in the 90s. You can actually just rip the throttle bodies off something and put carbs on it. Yeah. Because this is going to be a pretty primitive motor otherwise.
Yeah.
And if you've got some carbs that fit to like a Le Mans, right?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, you might need to rejet it a little bit or something, but that's not going to be too big of a feat.
So,
okay.
The last part I want to get to, and well, actually, I mean, it is terrible objectively in terms of marketing, but I also kind of love it just for like how out of touch it is. The name, the Quota.
Yeah, that is a curious.
So I understand why they did it, and it's because, you know, if you take, you know, the original like root word quota, I can't remember what the exact Italian pronunciation is, but, you know, essentially a direct translate, like a literal translation would be heights. As in, oh, this is a big adventure bike, and it's going to take you to new heights, and it's going to do mountains and hills and all sorts.
Right.
But I think this is, you know, it's sort of like how...
well, it's such an Italian move, because obviously someone at Moto Guzzi in America would have been like, hey, by the way, you know that's a word that implies the bare minimum of something you have to do, right?
And also invokes like notions of bureaucracy.
And traffic tickets.
Yeah.
And all sorts of other things. Yeah, yeah.
And the guy in Italy just said,
fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we come up with this great name. Exact. Yeah, it's so Italian just to be like, I don't fucking care. This is what we named it. Fucking deal with it.
It's sort of like the early like Honda manuals where it's like, we don't need a translator. We can do this.
It's kind of, I feel like the Italians maybe were hoping that Americans would react like that that Eddie Izzard joke about Kennedy calling everybody a Berliner. And they're like, did he just call us a donut? And they're like, it's American, it's slang. He's a fucking donut. Right? Like, oh, a donut. Yeah, just rolling with it. Like, yeah, you know. That's the only thing that really makes any sense. But okay,
Yeah, and and it kind of, at least it works for like the Norge, because you're like, what the fuck is a Norge? And then you have to go look it up. But it doesn't give you this misimpression to start with.
It's not preloaded with meaning.
Right.
Yeah. This is clearly just a case of not giving a fuck. But so I have to say, yes, this is awful. This is a quote adventure bike in a world where the GS has already existed for almost a decade, right? First GS is like 86, 84, somewhere in there.
Oh, that's a good question, actually.
Which, I mean, wasn't like, miles and miles better than this, like, ones are today, but still definitely way better than this.
Oh, the first GS was 1980.
Okay, there we go. So we're almost at 15 years past.
Although, actually, hang on. So that's the R80 G/S. I'm not counting that. I'm just wondering, what was the first like true, like,
I want to say it was the R80, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I think it could be as early as 1980. Anyway, BMW had been at this game for some time, but this is a move that Moto Guzzi...
Actually, I'm going to say the first GS. I think 1987 is the first bike that people would recognize as like having modern GS DNA in it. So, like, let's say 5 years earlier.
Okay, anyway, this is at least a full decade, if not a decade and a half behind BMW, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't surprise me too much. Like, Moto Guzzi comes into new markets and new bikes and new designs at, let's say, curious times.
Yeah.
And they hit the market in weird ways that confuse everybody. Like another one that was really curious like this, that we think is two bikes in particular. They're really the same bike that we think are beautiful.
I'm honestly not. I would not be surprised if like Moto Guzzi came out with a new bike tomorrow, and they're like, "Look at this full TFT touch display," and then like while they're demoing it, like they pull a stylus out the side that you have to tap on the screen with, like a Palm Pilot.
Right, but if you look at like say like the MGX21 Flying Fortress, which is a bike I must own one day. I know I love the power. We've ridden Dad's California. It's all that, just with extra stupid wavy plastic carbon fiber nonsense all over it. I love that bike. And I would rock it proudly in all its weirdness. But, they put that out kind of at the very end / height of sort of like victory weirdness.
Yeah.
Right? But like a little past the peak, right? Like it was like, okay.
A little bit, yeah.
Like, okay, victory's kind of on the downslip. I mean, they're still doing good business, but then they just got flipped over to Indian and whatever.
It was right around the same time that Victory started licensing the M-Pulse.
Yeah, it was like 2014 to like 2017 was kind of the MGX21.
Range, yeah.
And it was just a time where like, there was a lot of different designs in like an outrageous sort of baggers and things. There wasn't like a whole lot of huge technological innovations. It was a big style statements. But again, like the big pinnacle of that was like, when the Victory Vision came out in like 2006 or whatever it came out, right? Or 2004. And when and like Harley had been doing not too much, but there was just room. There had been a series of failed Indian motorcycle reboots, and then finally the one that stuck that we know now. And Moto Guzzi was just like, here we go. We heard Americans kind of wanted weird baggers a little while ago, so we're late to the game with this kind of awkward, not really fitting one. Right? And but even the Moto Guzzi California redesign came at an odd time. It was like, well, we heard for a while now the Japanese have quietly had a lot of success selling metric cruisers. We're going to sell a metric cruiser without the Japanese reliability appeal. Now, I know that Moto Guzzi has sold something called the California since when dirt was clean, but like that particular redesign of it and everything just felt like a weird time to do it. And I mean, I guess they didn't go all in on it, but it's also why redesign and make this whole new bike essentially just to not push it that hard in what would be its biggest potential market. I don't know, strange thing. Still wonderful bike. But
There is one thing I will say about this bike in its defense.
the Quota,
Yeah. Which is this yellow and beige color scheme.
it's not bad.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
I love, and the way that it's just like, it's so in your face because it's like this whole vertical stripe. Like the boundary is a vertical line across the airbox.
Well, it's gold separated into two colors. It's like yellow and silver put,
It's more like yellow and beige, but
you put them together and you'd have gold.
yeah, and it's so opinionated and it's so in your face and it's so against any other like if you showed this to anybody doing a modern paint scheme for a bike at any company, they'd be like, this breaks all the rules, you can't do this. And it, in contrast, it's fantastic.
Yellow is the second best color for any Italian motorcycle. It is not green, right? It's not white. It's not black.
I do also really like this darker red, and we need to go back to this. And if you go and watch the, it's not Aragon. What was the race after Aragon? Ducati did some throwback colors.
Oh, yeah.
And they did like some dark red. Like it's so dark, it's like close to brown.
It's hard
It's
to tell,
like-
though. This is probably the Ferrari, like, Rosso Corsa red. It's just an old picture or a weird, like...
But like some of these reds and like brown colors, like some of these older ones, the ones that are like, we need to desaturate this enough to hide the cigarette smoke is kind of a great color, that a great kind of palette that we need to go back to.
Well, I think, when people say that Moto Guzzis and Ducatis always look great in red, the sort of bikes and fairings that they make do particularly lend themselves to red. This is true. But also, Ducati and Moto Guzzi don't fuck around. They use Ferrari Rosso Corsa red.
Yeah.
And it's the best red. I mean, your Corvette's in a pretty good red, but it's not quite as good as the red of your old Norge.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. They just don't fuck around. They use the best possible red, and they generally are a bike of a certain type of look that lends itself well to this also. But underrated is, especially Ducati's is yellow, but also, Moto Guzzi's in yellow. Don't sleep on it. Take it over the black any day. Any fucking day.
Yeah. I have seen many signs that over the past couple of years, people are coming around to the idea that everything in black, white, and silver is super fucking depressing, and people are slowly starting to turn the corner. I mean, ultimately with cars, we're never going to get back to anything normal.
Oh, we will, because it's a false economy, right? And here's what's going to do it. So we're pretty much getting to the point where nobody can afford a new car, right? But even wealthy people now are like, what the fuck? This doesn't make any sense. Because the only people old enough, like with enough money to buy a car new now are like, well, I'm going to die before this is paid off, so I'll just lease it, right? Nobody's buying new.
Well, no, that's the problem. The problem is that all of these cars the problem is that nobody's buying these cars new. People are buying used cars from dealerships that were bought at auction that were originally leased. And the cars that everybody leases are black or white or silver because those are just the safest colors.
Right, but this all comes from the idea that people would say, "Oh, buy a black or white or silver car because they're more neutral because it'll have more resale value someday." So thus the people leasing them, whatever, it perpetuates this myth that it's somehow worth more because it's a more neutral color. But we're about to find out because, the already competitive used market is about to get really fucking competitive because no one can buy new. We're going to find out that it turns out that for a long time, the vast majority of car buyers who are buying used don't give a flying fuck about color. They just want something reliable that they can afford that isn't missing a fucking bumper and has hail damage all over it.
Right.
And you know what? They're like, I'm going to buy it and drive it into the ground over the next 6.5 years. What the fuck do I care if it's lime green or not? And I think fun colors are going to come back because, one, people will realize that, everyone just prefers white or black isn't true. People do like fun colors in cars. It's just this weird myth. It's one of these weird fucking things. Like, remember how every old guy until 5 years ago was like, nope, gotta change the oil every 3,000 miles. And it's like, really? Because in this book, it says I can go 8,000 miles. Like, what? No, gotta do it every 3,000 miles. It was just something that people heard someone say, a white car's worth more because it's got more resale value. It's not fucking true.
I can't remember where I saw it online, but I did see somebody posted a whole album of pictures of this small town Taco Bell that hadn't been updated since the early 90s.
And it was probably the most popular drive-through in town.
Yeah, in all of its purple, blue, and yellow glory.
Yeah.
And just
because it's a time capsule, yeah.
Yeah, and it was pristine and clean. It was this is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. I wish my local Taco Bell was this instead of this weird, brutalist industrial building in grayscale with no character.
For me, the depressing moment was when they stopped having real window displays and they just started doing the big vinyl stickers covering 80% of all the windows in every fast food joint. And I was like, not only does this cheapen the look of the building, but it's just a fucking vinyl sticker. It looks awful. Why did we decide this was good on glass? Why did we ever find this acceptable? I was like, this is something I've previously only seen in poor parts of Europe. Mm-hmm. Why are we... do you remember, in, the late 90s, there was a real chintziness to a lot of Europe because it hadn't, before the EU, it hadn't seen a boom yet? And...
Well... Oh, for country that hadn't joined. Yeah, there were definitely some,
and that has started to creep into the U.S. commercial building sort of situation in the last 10 years here.
I'll tell you what I did really like is there was one time actually getting out of here, I was really hungry and I went and stopped by Jack in the Box, and this is at 11 o'clock, and the drive-through menu. The little display that they put your order on.
Yeah.
It had basically crashed. And that's when I learned that all of the whole computer system for the drive-through menu and everything at Jack in the Box runs on Ubuntu.
Oh.
Because the window display manager had crashed. And I could just see, it was just a terminal displayed to me. So they run Linux, which is kind of cool.
Okay. Yeah, I could tell you all about what Jersey Mike's and a bunch of other ones of them run on, but yeah. Okay, cool. Actually, I think the Toast terminals might run on Linux also. Toast is everywhere. No, Toast is on Windows. Never mind. No, Toast is definitely Windows. Anyway, doesn't matter. I think we should move on to best bike in the world this week.
Let's do it.
Okay. Do. And the best bike in the world this week is a curious choice for me, but the Ducati Paul Smart.
The what now?
The Ducati Paul Smart. So I don't know as much about Paul Smart as I should, but Paul Smart was a racer, raced Ducatis, and really was there kind of at the 70s at this moment that Ducati took a big leap forward. And some people say that the bike that this bike is based off of is the most important bike in Ducati's history. I disagree. I think the 851 is the Ducati where Ducati became the Ducati that we know. But this is a bike that's basically based off of Ducati's first V-twins. So these are from like 2006, I think. They only made these for a year or two. It's a very like... so in the early, like mid 2000s, Ducati kind of lost its mind. It was like, okay, so
Are these like late Panta engines or?
I'm not sure exactly what motor is in these. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It is air cooled and everything, but it's
because it kind of looks like it's sharing a lot with like a 1000D.
Yes. I don't know if it's that motor. It's air cooled and all that kind of stuff. But what it is it's Ducati going, okay, we are going to make the most retro thing possible while still being like a modern handling, like, nice bike in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to make a limited number of them, and they're all going to look fucking amazing. We're only doing in this one paint scheme. And it's all a tribute to Paul Smart, kind of this moment where Ducati became relevant in racing again. So, like, if you look at, like, the picture there, like a bunch of these have the number 16 on the side because that was his number and all that stuff. But they've all got this blue trellis frame, this, like, really funky, cool swing arm, which kind of looks like a melted green noodle. But it somehow works and fits the bike. And then you got the gold suspension, and the
it's
very
not
60s
it's not like
exhaust.
Brembo gold. It's very clearly like intended to be gold. It's a little bit. Yeah.
Anyway, it's cool stuff. Like, is the bike uncomfortable? Yes. I mean, it's a 60s like race bike, right? And it comes with a very 60s fairing on it. There's like a full fairing version and like a bikini fairing version or whatever, but it's all very like early 70s Ducati, the whole thing. But, made to a modern build standard and all this kind of stuff. And these things were instant collector bikes because what was 2006 Swigs? The absolute fucking height of the cafe racer craze. Maybe the beginning of it. I say we were really already hitting a stride.
I think for people who are actually paying money for it, yes.
So this is best bike in the world for a couple reasons. One, it's a bike that delivers on its promise, right? This is going to be a probably pretty reliable, like good working, fast, fun to ride, vintage styled, and to some degree like vintage, anyway, vintage styled sport bike, but does have actual sort of history, pedigree, and legitness behind it. Yeah, sorry, it has legitimacy, right? Like it's not totally fucking stupid. And if you bought one of these in 2006, holy shit, did they increase in value? So I think when these came out, they were somewhere around like $14,000, which was quite a lot of money to shell out for a bike in 2006, 20 years ago. These peaked in value somewhere around $48,000. Here's another reason it's best bike in the world this week, Swigs. A Paul Smart Ducati still carries all of the weight with every old fucking fart that a Paul Smart Ducati carries. But their value has crashed down to about $15,000 again.
Okay. I mean, unless that name means something to you, that's incredibly dear. But for a low volume collector's bike, that's actually not crazy.
So they could go up again. They probably won't. They've probably like bottomed out and they'll just be kind of like stable. But if
Just
you wanted
like
to
trail
just
inflation a little bit.
But
yeah.
here's the great thing. They're not so fucking precious that you can't ride them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're just sort of average priced, nice bikes again. And guess what? They've all got like 800 miles on them. Because at some point, everyone was pretty much convinced that theirs was worth $48,000, which was only like 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you want proof that you're not going to be able to sell vintage styled bikes to people all that much longer, it was only like 5 years ago. I mean, just look at the what the sale prices were tracking on Bring a Trailer. It's like 5 years ago, they were like $48,000, and now they're tracking lower. They're tracking at about or just a tiny bit above what they were originally for sale for. And the answer is because all the guys that were super duper in love with what it was and what it represented in the history of it are dying.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge indicator of where the market's going. It's just more proof in my whole thing of like everything's going to go small and everything's going to go cheap. And things like this are going to become very much attainable for people like us. 10, 15 years ago,
understandably,
could we have ever dreamed of owning one of these? No.
So understandably, this is a very low data set. But yeah, it looks like the last 3 bikes were kind of sitting around $15,000 to $16,000. And then the one before that was $20,000. But somebody sold one in 2022 for $43,000.
But if you go back to 2010, they were like, $18,000. It hockey sticked way up and then crashed down again.
Right, yeah.
So this is best bike in the world for a couple reasons. One, it is a fucking cool bike. There's no mistaking it. You show up to any Cars and Coffee, you show up to the Rock Store, the Ace Cafe, or My Fucking Driveway, or Mid-Ohio Vintage Days, or Sturgis, or whatever, and everyone's that knows anything about two wheels is going to lose their fucking mind and go, this is so fucking cool. Mm-hmm. You're going to feel fucking cool on this. It's going to ride fucking cool. It looks, that seat looks awful. I bet I would struggle to do 200 miles straight on it. But whatever.
This is similar to driving a Ferrari or a Porsche where it's like your tailbone will be shattered by the end of this ride and you'll be thankful. Right. You'll appreciate it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're getting the genuine experience.
Yeah, it's like that weird thing driving the Ferrari where after half an hour, you're like, my calf is killing me from having to hold my leg in this really weird position to make it fit past my other foot into the wheel. Every time I change gear, it's like, oh God, this is strange.
I've got a cramp in my toe and my ankle because I have to hold my foot at an angle to be able to press the clutch without hitting the brake. Yeah.
it's fucking dumb, but you're like, but it's part of the experience, right? This would be the same. But it's fucking cool, but it's also like this glimmer of hope where, people our age that aren't going to have like very good 401ks, that aren't going to really have social security, that aren't going to have homes that return even half the investment that they did for our parents. There's still hope. We're going to get to have some dream bikes at some point.
Yeah.
Because they're just going to become that undesirable, because for all the people that have been owning them, they're just going to die, and then we'll have them and it'll be fine. And there'll be a smaller number of people after they die that want them. And that's
it makes you wonder, like, when you think about like your kids, like, what bikes from our generation would they desire?
The last R1, because you have to think, like, what do we not care about but is still like pretty cool?
Yeah, R1,
because it's unexpected stuff that becomes really desirable. Nobody ever thought like a fucking Mazda RX-7 was going to become a collector car.
That's true. Yeah, R1 is good. Yeah, last R1 is going to be a good one.
And last R6. I would say from right now, bikes that we don't expect to become super cool. Early DCT stuff, maybe?
That might be the case, yeah. Early, yeah, maybe. Maybe VFRs are going to be insanely cool. Like, even like a modern VFR 1200 might become super cool.
Vulcan Vaqueros, those 1700 Vulcan Vaqueros, because it's a full dressed, like full on bagger or full dress tourer. For right now, it's the cheapest one on the market. And as the price of, Harley baggers and full dress tours comes down, it'll be like, well, the Vulcan has to be worth at least $1,000 less at any point. So they'll be like, it's not going to become worth a lot, but it'll become cool and desirable, because it's like, well, this is a full bagger at bargain fucking basement prices. And there'll be people like, my kids, right? All their friends will be like, "You're riding a fucking big motorcycle? Ew." And they're going to be like, "Yeah, it's fucking weird. Yeah, I've got a fucking Vulcan Vaquero."
But I mean, like when your kids are like 30, like, what's going to be...
That's weirdly close. That's 17 years away.
Yeah.
It's got to be stuff that's just like somehow not relevant to the world 30 years from now. So maybe just all the super fast stuff. So maybe sport bikes. Yeah.
It may just be like every super sport and every leader bike just becomes insanely cool when it's like, wait, you can buy a motorcycle that has 3 times the horsepower that everyone's riding today, and it's like a quarter of the price.
Yeah, I've got to go back to 600s, 750s, and leader bikes. It's just going to be a thing that doesn't exist in the future. And they're going to be like, oh, you can only get them from like this era of like, 2001 to like 2018.
So they don't have traction control or ABS.
Yeah, they're fucking death machines.
Or like automatic emergency braking. Like, they have no safety features whatsoever. Yeah, maybe, yeah. God, can you imagine, like, in 20 years, there's still gonna be, like, 50,000, like, Gixxer 600s, 750s, and 1000s, like, still in perfect working order on the road, with a whole bunch of people who never got their driver's license before automatic emergency braking, before ABS, before traction control, before like driver monitoring. Like that's going to be a wild world. That's going to be like a big deal.
Yeah. So anyway, just to put a button on this, the last point I wanted to make about this is one of the coolest reasons that this is now like kind of becoming realistic for someone like us to own is it's a category of bike that we almost never talk about. It's a prestige motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, we kind of talked about it on the last episode with the Buell Hammerhead. I would say that's also like a prestige motorcycle, right? But like, I guess like a brand new Goldwing, almost any motorcycle over $20,000 is a prestige motorcycle, but only for like the first year or two of its life, and then it kind of becomes more ordinary.
Right, yeah.
But something like this has a prestige that stays with it through its entire life cycle.
Right.
And that's a rare thing. That's usually goes into sort of the boutique bike category. And this is from a major manufacturer. Like a big OEM, right?
Right.
And sure, something like this exists from every major OEM, but they're few and far between. And the whole reason that they're prestige is like, well, yeah, it's kind of like your Corvette, right? Okay, weirdly, there's this like era of Corvettes now that's strangely affordable. But it still says Corvette, so there's a bit of magic there.
Right, yeah.
This will always have that magic attached to it. And I think the price is kind of stable now, and I don't know that it's going to rise much with inflation.
I think it'll probably trail inflation.
I think it'll trail a little bit. It'll track a little bit below inflation.
Well, who actually knows Paul Smart? And is that number going to grow or decline over time?
It will decline, but most people, I would say in the world of motorcycling, more people know the Paul Smart Ducati than they know Paul Smart. This thing made fucking waves when it came out.
Right, that's my point. Is that it's going to be, this is this is named after an actual racer, but people are going to know less and less about that racer.
I mean, I want to say I bought my first motorcycle in 2003. So this came out a few years afterwards. I mean, I was going down to a newsstand every month and buying motorcycle print magazines, like when this came out. Like, this was a big deal in my world when this came out. Because, yeah, I'm pretty sure I was under 21 when I got my first bike. I had not been out of high school that long. I was like, oh, shit. I just woke up one day and realized, fuck, I've had my own place for a while now. There's nobody to tell me I can't have a motorcycle. Then I was like, I guess I'll get on eBay. Like, what does it cost? Oh, shit, I can have one for $600? Done. Right? Like, it happened that day. Like, I woke up that morning, and by like 11 a.m., I'd bought a motorcycle. Like, it was just that moment. Like, oh, there's not any barriers in the way. I have a place. I have a place to park it. I have some basic tools. Let's do this. And this kind of came out. So this is a special bike for me, but there we go. Anyway, it's a prestige motorcycle. And now, Swigs, you and I can potentially share in a bit of this prestige. Weirdly enough. And there'll be more models like this to come. So, let's get into a topic here. What time are we at on the recorder?
We are at about 50 minutes.
That's not too bad. We should have gotten through this quicker, but whatever. Okay, so what do we want to get into? The lights or the tuning stages?
Let's do lights real quick because
Yeah, there's not too much to say
there's
about
not
the
too much
lights.
to say about this, but it's this is just a thing that caught my eye that was really cool, but also is very interesting in that Yamaha isn't like especially promoting it.
Hold on, real quick. I just want to say, I know some people think this about the podcast. Just for all these people that think that, we go through a bike and we immediately list its weight and its horsepower and its torque and blah, blah, blah. And that's all we fucking we didn't mention any of those fucking specs about this bike. And that was very much intentional on my part. I just wanted to talk about what the essence of this bike is. All right, go.
Yeah. So Yamaha has put out some promotional material on this, and then mostly it's been journalists really highlighting it. But for the Tracer 9 for 2025, if you actually go and we're looking at the homepage for this bike on the Yamaha website right now. If you go through it, the top features, they got 3 bullet points for their top features, which is the rider modes, the 7-inch TFT display,
Bullshit.
and the 900cc 3-cylinder motor that they've been making for half a decade or more now.
Chef's kiss, no notes on that part.
Legit. But if you just look at the pictures they have, there are a couple pictures that show off these super fancy new headlights. And I only learned about this because I actually looked at a bunch of articles that were talking about this. And they're not talking about it on their own page, but this is possibly the most significant thing.
Low-key big news.
Yeah. So on the Tracer 9, Yamaha has added this brand new set of headlights. And what they've done is they've put, instead of having them mounted up in like a nacelle, like in line with the handlebars, they're all now mounted in the fairing.
Kind of where you would expect like dirt bike radiators to be.
Mm-hmm. And what they've got,
actually, exactly where you'd expect it to be. Yeah.
Or like air scoops. And what they've done is they've got this like this 4-nacelle array of headlights, and with a camera as well. And what they've done is they now have full matrix LED headlights that you can keep your high beams on in traffic and rely on the adaptive matrix to block out the light for oncoming drivers, so you can keep your high beams on.
Well, not in this country.
Not in this country, because the NHTSA is fucking horrendous at adopting new technology.
But if you're riding this in Italy, for example, you can just leave your brights on and it will automatically dim them. Not in every direction, just the direction of an oncoming driver.
Right. And
also, what's the biggest party trick of these light swigs?
So these are fully ECU and IMU integrated headlights. So these are cornering headlights. So when you dip into a turn on a banked road in the middle of the night, in the middle of fucking nowhere, this will light up whichever direction
of the corner.
Yeah, whichever direction you're leaning in, and light it up for you so you can kind of see through the turn in the middle of nowhere where there's no ambient lighting and there's no street lights.
Yeah.
And this is a party trick that is, to me, exactly what should be like like absolutely front and center on an adventure bike or a touring bike of any kind. Because
Swigs, I love this because, again, this is for the haters that think, with like, oh my god, Pete and Swiggies hate TFT displays with the power of a burning suns for no fucking reason. Like, we don't hate all new technology. Just pointless technology. Like,
right.
This provides real value.
Yeah. So if you are somebody who's doing a lot of touring, if you're going on your multi-month ridiculous trip, or you're doing 500 miles a day and it turns out that you're behind schedule and you end up doing 2 or 3 hours in the pitch black because you overestimate how far you're going, or if you're somebody who works a night shift and you're reliably coming home in the dark, if you're, any of these situations where you're frequently riding in the dark, having a lighting system like this is an enormous value because it gives you way more light. Like, to be able to just ride your bike on the fucking highway with your high beams on, oh my god, that's great. To be able to ride with way more light and not have to consciously think and be conscientious of other drivers to turn your high beams down, it seems like a little thing, but when you're on an unfamiliar road in the middle of the night and you just want to get to your hotel or motel, kind of a big deal. This is the sort of thing that just, it's a game of margins that just makes you safer and more relaxed and be able to enjoy the ride more. This is a feature, and this is also a feature that you cannot get aftermarket, because to be able to integrate it into the ECU, it's got to be make and model specific. It's got to be
it's
adapted.
got to fit inside these fairings and be able to hit the angles that it needs to. And
this is something only an OEM can do. And to have it on a bike like this is a killer feature that would make me, if this situation applied to me, buy this bike over every other bike on the market.
And way to go, fucking Yamaha. Like, this is the kind of thing I would have expected to come out on the Goldwing first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm frankly shocked it's not on it's on this specific bike. And I'm even shocked it's this Tracer instead of the Tenere. But okay. Now, here's the other thing, Swigs. We do not want to see this on every motorcycle.
Correct. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think, there's a $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 price limit because, again, we still very much believe in very basic, cheap motorcycles because that's just the sort of thing that's going to fit into someone's life better. And there's no need to take a $7,000 motorcycle and make it $7,800 just to incorporate this. There's just no need for that.
I mean, I wouldn't mind that. That wouldn't be too bad a price jump for me. But I imagine this system is more like $1,000 or more because this.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows?
Because this is something that's as expensive as like fuel injection and ABS, because this has to be tuned for every model, right? Because it has to work with the mounting point. It has to work with the IMU. It has to work with...
Well, it also requires a full development team, right?
Right.
Like, whilst they're testing and calibrating the ABS, for every model of bike, they've got to have a couple guys who are working for like a full year on just testing these lighting systems and calibrating them for every situation, everything, just along with the ABS and all the other electronic features of the bike.
There's a reason ABS is like $300 to $500.
There's a great Fortnite video on it.
So this is probably going to be the same, and it's probably going to be lower volume in terms of like a sales factor. So I would imagine this would cost significantly more, but I would expect like I would expect this to be like $600 to $800 or more per bike, and then it also has to fit into the fairings and everything as well. So it may be even like it may be way more.
I gotta say
yeah.
though, this whole like cluster in here, while it's not the most elegant, beautiful thing I've ever seen, I much prefer it to the look of like triangle lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good
So,
stuff.
Yeah, but ultimately, I don't know if I would say like this needs to be cheaper than like or more expensive than like $12,000 to be a feature, but probably around like 10,000 or 9,000. But it needs to be. But I think it still kind of fits into the adventure / touring category.
I want to see this on basically every bit. Well, in my dream world, like when I'm king of the universe, you know, the president of at least the entire northern hemisphere, I would like to see all TFTs go away, and we'll just replace them with these lighting systems on big expensive bikes.
Yeah. But yeah. But yeah, hats off to Yamaha. Super cool, actually relevant modern feature on a bike. Let's keep this up.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot too. All right, so let's talk about making your bike go faster. Something we almost never talk about. I don't know why this particularly appealed to me to talk about this week, but I'm really into this. So I was as I do just cruising Craigslist, you know, for all my motorosexual needs, and I came across, a Harley Davidson that usually if you see this, they're like, "Oh, it's got the stage 1 kit." And this one was like, "Hey, bubs, I got the stage 2 kit on this one." And as I tend to do when I hear this, I'm like, "What does that mean?" Well, it doesn't actually mean anything, but there are some rough guidelines to what it means. And I thought, let's walk through the stage kits plus a little something I like to call the stage like -1 kit, and talk about if you're going to make your bike faster. And let's take the stage 1 through 4 as Screamin Eagle defines it, because when it comes to like stages in tuning, probably the most widely sought out source is Harley Davidson's like Screamin Eagle custom shop stuff. At least in the world of motorcycles, right? There'll be custom shops you can take your car to or whatever, and they'll have like stage 1 through whatever, and they'll lay it out themselves. Like, here's our various levels of how we'll boost your performance. But the Harley Davidson Screamin Eagle isn't a terrible model for describing these. I mean, I have problems with it, but it's as best as we're going to do. And it turns out most other people will sort of model their systems on this. So when you hear a bike being stage whatever, we're going to talk about what that means very roughly and what those approximate costs could be, what those approximate benefits could be, and why ultimately you probably shouldn't do any of it. So here goes. Before you do any of this bullshit, a thing that Screamin Eagle doesn't even offer, that I'm aware of, is changing your sprockets or somehow adjusting your final drive ratio. Now, everything else we talk about here is going to involve...
Well, yes, because that would be cheap.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, relatively cheap. But yes, in some cases, in a lot of motorcycles, actually cheap. Like $30, $40 cheap. Like, if you didn't know, there is a way that you can get either more acceleration or a higher top speed. Not both, but one or the other for under $50 Technically, you can do it. Technically. I'm going to say more like $150 because you'll need to buy a new belt or chain, probably. But
You can punch out a chain.
I mean, yeah,
push
maybe
out a
you can
link.
add some links and do some magic.
Or maybe you
might
gotta
have some-
maybe you gotta spend another $50 on a chain. Whatever.
I like to spend about $120 on a chain, but sure. Yeah, you know.
Or you can just buy a chain punch tool at Harbor Freight and then spend another $10 on a couple extra master links.
Oh, I got the Motion Pro tool. I got the nice one. But yeah. So your final drive ratio. So your final drive ratio, right, is if you look in between your engine and your rear wheel, right? Something is connecting your engine to your rear wheel. It might be a drive shaft. It might be a belt. It might be a chain, right? But there's a spinny part here, and there's a spinny part here. And they're not the same. And it turns out, whether it's a belt or a shaft or... Oh.
Nobody else... Well, unless you're watching on YouTube, you're not going to see this, but it's really annoying me that you're spinning your hands in opposite directions.
Okay, fair
They
enough.
are going in the
They
same
are going to go in
direction.
the same direction. But, like, yeah. But there's a spinny thing and a spinny thing, and one's bigger than the other. And that's a ratio, right? Just like on your bicycle, right? Now, if you're doing something like an old Vespa or a Lambretta, right, you're dealing with like 8 to like 12 horsepower, usually somewhere in that range.
When you don't have a lot of horsepower or a lot of torque to work with, you're making a big trade-off.
Right.
When
and
you change it.
Your ratio is going to be wildly different. It's going to be something like 5-1. Is what your final drive ratio is. And everything else is kind of getting you like in stages from just getting a meaningful amount of torque off the line and then getting you up to that 5-1 about, right? You know, something like that. If you're like a 200cc Vespa, like a P200 that does 60 miles an hour or something, it's going to be about a 5-1 ratio, somewhere in that, right? But then as soon as you're talking about like real power in motorcycle, or a car, or whatever, it goes up to 1-1 because nothing gets better than 1-1, right? Once you get past 1-1, well, then you're in overdrive, which is no good for acceleration or power. That's just there to, oh, now we're cruising and you are now getting just better fuel economy, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially the state where, like, if you remember as a kid on your, 6-speed bike, when you're in 6th gear and you try and take off from the line on that, you got to just kind of stand on the pedal, and then after like half a second, it kind of starts to move forward, and you can get your balance and get moving.
Right. So let's say you've got something like a Gixxer 600, right? And your top gear, which is not overdrive or whatever, is a 1-1 ratio. Well, you can change the size of your sprockets. Either the rear sprocket that your chain goes on to the rear or your front sprocket. It's usually easy to change your front sprocket, but you can change either of them because, they wear out over time, don't you know, and you need to replace them anyway.
I feel like
know?
most Gixxer owners don't know
Right,
that.
yeah.
But, yes.
They just end up looking like a big row of shark fins. But, like, yes, you can change them out with different sizes, which will change your final drive ratio. So you can change your final drive ratio to be over or under that 1-1, right? Which will either give you a higher top speed.
I just want to make sure, are we still on track here? Because I thought we were ripping Harley riders.
We're going to get to that. I'm just talking about if you're going to actually make a mod to get yourself more acceleration or more top speed, this is by far the cheapest, easiest, and most cost-effective way to do it. almost regardless of what vehicle you're on. If you're on a 50cc CVT scooter, you can get a different variator, which essentially is like upping or dropping the number of teeth in your front sprocket. Right?
Yeah.
Whether you're running a belt or whatever, you change out the pulley sizes or whatever, but changing that ratio from your motor to the rear wheel will give you either better and meaningfully better acceleration or top speed. You can have a higher top speed and it'll take longer to get there, or you'll have a slightly lower top speed and you'll get there quicker. And if you really need to fuck with the performance of your two-wheeled vehicle, I highly suggest that you just do this and don't fuck with anything else. Right? And this is what I call the Screamin Eagle stage -1. Right?
Okay.
Right? This is...
All right.
If you're going to do it, you should probably just do this. Right? If you have to have a higher top speed for some reason, you know, if it's like a Gixxer 600, you'll still accelerate really fucking fast. Even if you've like adjusted your ratio for a higher top speed, you'll still probably accelerate really fast and have a higher top speed. But your friends will beat you off the line. But you might pass them like, you know, a couple miles down the road.
Or you can just be a dickhead and say like, oh, you've got to stop for gas? I don't.
That's true. Yeah, you'll have better fuel economy too because you're accelerating slower.
Yeah, I'll see you at the next gas station. I'm going to get a coffee. I'll see you then.
I don't know if it's good for a whole gas stop. Like, yeah. Screamin Eagle Stage 1 says, let's move more air and fuel. Mm-hmm. And this is the part of motorcycle tuning or car tuning, frankly, that you've heard something about.
So I'm not going to dig into, because I only learned we were doing this topic about 4 hours ago. So I've done no research. I'm going to base all of my research on just the...
Oh, you've pulled up the graph. On what
I'm just going to use the highlighted sections, and I'm going to use that to derive all of my knowledge of the Screamin Eagle stages, and we're just going to go off that.
Well, it turns out it's really basic shit that they're talking about, but it is and it isn't. Okay, so you'll notice, Swigs, if you look at we'll have to put this graphic up, but stage 1 basically...
Oh, stage 1 is airbox and ECU, I'm sure.
And exhaust.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to a Harley Davidson dealership or, you know, whatever, or you're just looking to sort of up the performance of your bike, everyone talks about, well, we got to get her breathing real easy, man. Okay, let's think about this. So they're saying, let's move more air and fuel through your engine. Okay, I agree in principle. Yes, you move more air and fuel through. There's more stuff to make go bang. Okay, sure. Will this produce more power? Yes. So they are talking about, let's put on a less restrictive exhaust. Okay. Whether or not it meets like noise compliance or emissions things is questionable, but sure. Okay. Let's say you're going to replace it with an exhaust, and let's say that exhaust has an O2 sensor. It should have an O2 sensor. It's probably just the mufflers that are past your header pipes, which have the O2 sensor on them, in all likelihood. So it's only half of your exhaust system, really, that you're replacing. The header pipes and the sensors you're probably keeping from original here. So you're getting some shit that honestly sounds a lot bigger difference, and it's making an airflow. But it'll probably be a little less restrictive. Sure, it's got less muffling shit in it, whatever. And then you're going to change the way that the fuel is mapped, because you're putting on a thing which will let you suck in more air. Okay, so you need to add more fuel. So you got to change the computer to add in more fuel. Well, this requires putting it on a dyno. Now, sometimes a lot of people have done the work for you. There are some people out there, and God bless them, they went to a shop and paid for expensive dyno tuning, which is something like $100 an hour. More or less. If you're at a Harley Davidson dealer, be prepared for $200 an hour.
Honestly, I'm surprised it's that cheap.
Well, all they're doing is after they have been paid something like $150 an hour to fit this new exhaust and air intake into your bike. And it doesn't matter how long it actually took them to do it. They have a book rate for doing it. So a dude basically unscrews part of your exhaust system and then screws on a new part, unscrews your air box, screws another bit on. This is if you get it done at Harley Davidson. And then puts it on a rolling road and has to measure out like, okay, blah, blah, blah. Even though they damn well know exactly where it should be set because someone has done this with this bike before, put these exact same parts on a stock engine, and knows what the setting for the ECU should be. But Harley won't do that for you. You have to pay to put your bike on the dyno, on the rolling road and everything, and figure out what the power is and everything, and then tune it special for you, brother. And you know what? For $200 at most Harley Davidson dealers, you even get to watch them do it. They'll let you sit in the room and put the fucking mufflers over your head, and you're like, yeah, we're tuning for performance, baby. It's fucking dumb as shit because the guy could have just plugged it into a laptop and been like, bruh, there it goes. Like the whole process could have taken maybe an hour and 20 minutes, but this gets drug out over an entire fucking day, and you end up paying north of $3,000 for a 5 to 10% increase in power. It's kind of bullshit. And what does 5 to 10% increase in power make? Let's say you're buying a Milwaukee 8, Softail, whatever. This bike's making like 80 horsepower stock. So best case scenario, you're getting 10% more power. We're up to 88 horsepower on an 800, 750 pound bike. We're talking 1/2 of a second in 0 to 60. Maybe 4 extra miles per hour on the top end.
Which you'll never hit anyway.
For thousands of dollars? This is an insane idea.
Yeah, the value proposition is ludicrous. But not only that...
you'd be better off changing your final drive ratio.
Right. But not only that, you're talking about stage 1 of 4. So, what is the prestige of stage 1? What is... Like, if you show up to a Harley Davidson, rally...
Listen, I'm not a pussy. I did the stage 1 kits.
It's like, And how many people are going to say, I did the stage 2, the stage 3, the stage 4?
And what's the implication of stage 1? Hey, don't worry, man. I bought this one, and I had them fit the stage 1 kit when I got it, because, Harley Davidson, they build it like they're idiots to start with.
Right. Yeah, the fact this is tied to the dealership and to the manufacturer is kind of insane.
Well, we're kind of singling out Screamin Eagle here, but this is a very common thing that dudes did with inline 4 sport bikes too.
You know who did it the best though?
It's not who did it first, it's who did it best. Okay.
Yamaha with the Z1 RTC.
Oh, slapping the turbo on it.
Slapping the turbo on and making you sign the waiver.
Yeah. By the way, this does not have good enough clutch springs.
Look, if Harley Davidson made you sign a waiver and voided your warranty, instantly amazing.
I would have more respect for them if they did. Actually, I will say, yeah, all this Screamin Eagle shit, they do say that you keep your warranty with all of this stuff.
Pussies.
I know. Anyway, so yeah, this is basically just the modern day version of putting a bigger carb on it and an open pipe and drilling holes in your airbox, right? That's all we're really talking about. Except you don't have to actually fuck with the carburetor. You fuck with the fuel injection system with your computer. That's it. This is, I mean, if you have to do something past changing your final drive ratio, I guess, okay, this is the least dumb one, but it's still a curious way to go. I did this with my CB350. And I did it successfully. I got more power out of the bike. But this is what they don't tell you. Yes, there's more power, but it's in different places.
Right, yeah.
So on the CB350, all of a sudden, it was a pig under 40 miles an hour. And once I got above over 40 and really got it high in the rev range and got the gears up, all of a sudden it came alive. And it was like, oh, this bike that used to top out at like 64 miles an hour now does 87 after I fit like some Mikuni like VM like 30 carbs to it and jetted the shit. I went through a lot of jets to get it right and ran some aftermarket pipes on the thing and modified the airbox, all of that shit. And I got it running sweet. And was it more powerful? Fuck yes. But I knew that I was just eating that cam alive when I got above 60 miles an hour. It just, the thing doesn't have the oil system for it on the top end.
And do you want a 350 that like has worse power delivery than a 150cc scooter around town?
No, I mean, that thing had, like, pretty good poke. It was, like, 24. It was... But, yeah, it was kind of meant to top out at, like, 63, 64, and it was topping out at about 87. And that's with GPS I was doing it, not the actual speedo. The actual speedo on it couldn't be trusted above, like, 23 miles an hour.
Oh, I rode that thing wide open at full tuck on 85
when I had the Bikunis on it.
Yeah, and
it was good.
The speed, it was just like,
bouncing
around.
It was like, you're doing somewhere in this 23 mile per hour range.
Yeah. Well, Dad was riding alongside.
The magnet in the back of that thing was fucked. Yeah.
Dad was riding alongside me on the Vulcan, and I signaled to him. And I went to him like at the end of the day. I was like
point at your speedo. What?
Yeah, I was like, look at your speedo. And at the end, I was like, "How fast were we going?" When I motioned to you, it's like, "Oh, we were doing 65," and it was probably reading like 75 at the time. It was bouncing around 75.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying with a good like 2 or 3 miles build up, I could get it up to like 80 something. High 80s even. It was just like, but I was just eating the engine. It wasn't worth it. Again, all the low and mid-range power was gone. It was just all upper end power.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I just had to build up like that much pressure in the fucking venturis of the carburetor to just get that fuel and air moving. And below that, because here's the thing. These bikes and their fuel systems and the exhaust and everything is set up for basically like an RPM range. And when you change how much air and fuel's moving through it, that range that it's optimized for moves. And it usually moves up. And this is why I know it sounds bullshit to a lot of people, but tuned for the mid-range isn't like this bullshit statement that you think it is. It means, hey, we took this thing, and does it have less top-end power? Yes. But holy shit, is like the power in the middle more usable. And this has to do with what size valves are in it. This has to do with, how much air and fuel is moving in there. This has to do with how the head is shaped, and for
Yeah,
the
I
whole
think
thing, the bore versus the stroke.
the best
There's a
example
lot of things
of
that
this,
go into this.
The best example of this is, what can a Chevy LS motor do if you don't care about the longevity of the motor?
Yeah, it turns out it could basically like replace the motor in a fucking like SpaceX rocket.
Yeah,
but not for very long.
You can get an you can get a 90s LS motor to do 800 horsepower, as long as you don't expect it to live very long.
Oh, add a blower to it, you'll get north of 1,000 real quick.
Right. Like, it's it's not a problem. But
you're going to measure that engine's life in hours, not miles.
yeah, and that welcome to the world of marine engines.
Or drag racing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like those engines, those drag racing engines, like, you'll be like, oh shit, they're getting like 3,000 horsepower out of a 7-liter motor. It's like,
yeah, for a 2-minute engine life.
Exactly. Yeah, for like they'll run it like 4 times and then it'll explode. Like, yeah. So anyway, stage 2. Stage 2, and here's the big lie. Now we have to talk about the lie of tuning stages. Every time you go to another stage, you're not adding to the last stage. You have to spend all the money from the previous stage again.
Yeah, because an engine with the air intake, the ECU,
it's all a careful balance.
The ratio, the piston rod. Well, I guess piston rods and cams are technically you could skip to the end, but yeah, the air intake, like the
piston rods. You mean the con rods or the push rods? What rods are you talking? It doesn't matter. Just keep going. I'm sorry.
No, I mean the piston rods. But like, I guess technically by this image, yeah, I guess they are the
doesn't matter.
Not conclusive from this image, but
they have the con rods highlighted in this photo.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, in terms of reinforcing parts to take more power, okay, yes, you could skip to the end, fine. But in terms of air intake, in terms of ECU programming for your fuel rates at different RPMs, in terms of exhaust flow, like all of those things have to be recalculated every time.
Okay, so basically stage 2 goes, okay, we got your air intake bringing in more air, which, by the way, means it's also bringing in more dirt and bullshit. I mean, just so you know, not good for your motor necessarily. Second, we got your exhaust pushing more out, so you can move more through the middle. Well, with your ECU flash from stage 1, we got the maximum amount going through the middle. Well, stage 2 says, well, what if the middle can let more through? Which means we're going to put in what they call a hot cam. So if it's a Harley-Davidson motor, the cam's at the bottom. If it's a Honda or anything that's from basically this century, philosophically, or a Milwaukee 8, the cams are at the top of the motor. And it's a thing with lobes on it, and they move around, and they have little bits that stick out, and as they move around, they make your valves open and shut. And so the lobes stick out more, oblong. They're a little more egg-shaped than the cam that you pulled out of this thing to put this new cam in. And so the valves will open longer, and the valves will open further, and they'll stay open a little longer. So that's more lift and more duration. How much? I mean, it all depends on what the motor is and whatever, but there'll be a little bit more lift. And if there's more lift, there will be more duration. But you could have just a tiny bit more lift and longer duration, or lots more lift and still more, but not quite as much more duration. There's various ways that they can be shaped. But basically it means that the valves will be open more and for longer, which means more fuel and air will come in. So there's more big bang. Well, now that there's this more big bang, you're going to need different pistons and different conrods, which means now the whole engine's got to come apart, or the whole top end's got to come apart, because the jugs have to come off and the conrods have to be replaced, because now there's enough more big bang that if you don't replace them with stronger rods, they might bend, or the pistons might get a hole blown through them, and you might need different rings too. And then guess what? After all of this, you've got to pay $200 an hour for multiple hours for it to go on the rolling road to get tuned again. Even though someone's done this exact same tune before, but Harley Davidson's not just going to let you have their numbers. You've got to recalculate it all again. And guess what they're going to say? Well, unless you give us like another $1,300 for an even better exhaust system, I don't know that you're really getting everything out. Like, do you really want to be spending $5,000 to not be getting everything out of it? I think you should just be spending another $7,300 here, bro. For now, what we're talking, maybe a 20% increase in power. Okay. From stock, not from what you got on stage one, just from stock. Okay, but again, we're talking about even more diminishing returns. Yes, it's like another 10% in power, but when I said before that 10% in power, like percent in power increases are diminishing returns in performance. So yes, it is double the increase in power, but you're only going to see like 1.5 to 1.3%, like what you would have seen over stage one. Like, it's not, if stage one got you a 1/10 of a second faster, 0 to 60, this is getting you a 1/10 and a 1/3 faster on 0 to 60.
Yeah. So
for what could easily be $7,500, $8,000. It's fucking crazy.
So I do want to just truncate this a little bit because we're already at an hour and a half.
Well, that means okay.
But,
we probably got 10, 20 minutes left before we got to go on to Patreon only, but yeah.
But, yeah, and in this whole scenario, you also have to look at this from the perspective of if you got like a 103-inch motor, why not go for the 109? Or the 111 or the 112 or whatever bigger motor.
Yeah, get the bigger motor at time of purchase.
Yeah, get the bigger motor at time of purchase. But also, if you have the biggest motor, why do you need more power? Because ever since the Milwaukee 8s got a little bit more refined, around
the Milwaukee 8 went overhead cam and 4-valve and 80 plus horsepower with over 100 foot-pounds of torque. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no need to tune a Milwaukee 8 of any kind. It solved every Harley-Davidson performance problem that ever existed.
Yeah. And honestly, if you own that bike and you're riding up against a similar bike, you know what? You can beat anybody off the line purely with rider skill, with better clutch control, with better launch skill, in a straight line, you can, with a little bit of practice, you can beat anyone that you know.
So let's go through stage 3 here, and then we'll leave stage 4 for Patreon. And then after we get through stage 4, I have looked it up.
The winners of and the Patreon. We should talk about the winners in terms of performance mods.
Oh, we will too, because there is a clear one. We'll get through stage 3 here. Then in Patreon we'll do stage 4. Plus, I'm going to talk about how a 1980s Harley Davidson Evo motor compares to a brand new Mustang GT, and it'll fucking surprise you. Okay, so let's go with stage 3. Stage 3, I think, is the most glorious stage. Stage 3 is the pinnacle of redneck living. The big bore kit. The big bore kit is the ultimate life goal of everybody who makes less than $40,000 a year.
Oh, yeah, because the big bore kit, you can just say it's a bigger... There's now a number attached to the performance that you're adding.
Yeah.
That's like, this is 100 cc's bigger. So, clearly it's more powerful.
Right.
Bigger number means better.
So, the big bore kit, again, for the same reasons, you might have to do the exhaust and the intake again. You definitely have to do the fuel system again. And for all this fuel system stuff and the dyno tuning, again, even if you've got an old Evo Harley with a carburetor, like, this means a new carburetor and jetting nightmares every single time you're doing this. Just because you're vintage, don't think you're getting around this fucking problem.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're getting... Yeah. You have to do this.
So at this point, we're not just replacing the con rods. We might be replacing the actual crankshaft as well. We're putting on bigger jugs, which means, guess what? New rods and new pistons again. Right?
Well, you're definitely changing the crank.
Hopefully at this point you're still keeping the air intake you got from stage 2 probably, but you are spending money replacing everything again. And this is how they get you. They're like, well, if you're going to do stage 2, you're just throwing money away if you don't do stage 3, brother.
Well, actually, this is far more brutal if it's push rod, because yeah, you do have to change the whole crank.
Oh, at this point, yeah, you're replacing the push rods too.
Yeah, because you could just do a top end if you're just doing, if it's overhead cam, but you have to change the whole crank out, because if you're going to change all of the cams on the crankshaft, you might as well just change out the whole the whole crankshaft.
Well, again, we're not talking just about Harleys. This kind of is sort of if you're tuning any engine. We're just going through Harley Davidson staging things here. But yes. Okay, what you're saying roughly adds, yes, it adds up. But at this point, like I said, you're changing the jugs, right? And okay, sure. But again, now what are we talking about in performance? And I think even Screamin Eagle at this point is like, well, stage 2 gives you 15 to 20%. Stage 3 is okay, it's a 25% increase in power over stock. It's so much money. You're replacing almost every part of the motor from where the sticky out fin bit starts all the way up, and shit inside below there too. You're changing a lot of shit, right? For a 25% increase in power, which you didn't really need to start with. And Swigs, I know you're going down here and looking at these prices on the Screamin Eagle performance page. They will not sell you these parts directly. They're just letting you know what the parts cost is up front. You cannot buy this shit and install it yourself from Harley.
Oh, yeah.
You have to buy this shit, add tax, and then pay a dude, $160 an hour or whatever to install it, and then pay for the dyno time. And when we're looking at stage 3 here, we're already looking at $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 in parts.
So just looking at stage 3 here, they're already talking about $5,000 in parts, And then there's going to be at least a 30 to 50% premium on dealership, like labor and everything on top of that. Like,
well, again, this doesn't include another exhaust.
This
and
is
the
how
dyno tuning.
This is how you turn your $14,000 motorcycle into a $30,000 motorcycle that actually is still a $10,000 motorcycle.
Yes.
Like,
yes. None of this shit adds value whatsoever.
Exactly.
It's fucking crazy. So again, if you really need your bike to go faster for some reason, just change your final drive ratio. If you need it to accelerate faster, change that final drive ratio.
Yeah, you know what? Rather than spend $10,000 to make your bike worth less, you know what? Put a different front and rear sprocket on your bike.
Yeah, and then get up to that speed and then say, do I want to go another $9,000 to make, like, you change it up and down? So experience the acceleration and then change it to experience the top speed. Experience them both, then go, do I want to go another the cost of another whole motorcycle to attain both of these at will? Like, boom, on the throttle.
Or if you really like torque, are you okay with spending another 3 cents per mile to get a bit more torque? Because that seems a lot more reasonable than fucking up your bike in a way that nobody else would want to buy it.
Uh-huh.
Like, from factory.
Oh my, there have been times in my life that I have looked at, like, you know, like a 98 to like 2003 Suzuki Gixxer 600 or 750 S-Rad. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to buy this so fucking bad. And then the description's like, yep, did the drill, the holes in the airbox mod, change the gearing, and I'm like, oh, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, why'd you fuck with it? And these are just the cheap, easy things that are relatively easy to reverse. Right? The moment I see an R6 for sale and they're like, put a different cam in it, I'm like, I'm out. No.
Yeah.
No. The bike was already fucking wicked. No one ever accused a stock R6 of being slow. Ever. I mean, really, why don't you just ride around an R6 and just tell people that you put a different cam in it? No one will ever fucking know. And to be fucking honest, all these dudes with like the Screamin Eagle bullshit on the side of their Harleys, I never see them breaking 85 miles an hour. Like, how much is it to just buy Screamin Eagle stickers?
Yeah, I remember we were heading out of town, actually to Vintage Days, and we stopped at an O'Reilly's to pick up like an inverter for the pickup.
Oh yeah,
and we came across that guy on the R6, and this is the most stereotypical R6 interaction.
It was an R1, but yeah,
it was an R1. It's the most stereotypical R1 interaction you can possibly have, which is, one, he told us all the mods he had on the bike,
and
then two, he tried to sell it to us.
Right. So good. So good. Yeah, so really, you've heard people say this a million times, but if you want your bike to go faster, just buy a faster bike. Like, sell your bike and roll that into a bike that goes faster. This
should be obvious.
The one
but to a lot of people, it's
caveat
not.
I'll give to this, and it's because I'm doing it, is if you've got something so old like 1950s, 1960s, it's actually quite common these days that instead of buying original or reproduction parts, you can get kits which are an upgrade to basically refresh your motor. So if you have an old Vespa, 125 or a Lambretta or whatever, or even actually some modern like 125 scooters, it can actually be cost effective to buy the bigger kit. But even in the case of my Lambretta, I keep talking about spending stupid amounts of money on my Lambretta. I'm talking about like $2,800, right?
Right.
For like the pinnacle of the pinnacle of what I could do is actually somewhere around $12,000, but that's for like a 330cc motor that's like made of billet from scratch that comes in plug and play. I'm not doing that, but for keeping the original.
You're also
motor
talking about making
casing
it like 38 horsepower or something ridiculous.
Right. I'm fine with like 14. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just want to be able to do 60 miles an hour and ride it on state highway and not give a fuck. Exactly. Yeah. But to take it up to 200 cc's and make it a little bit more powerful than like, maybe like 10% more powerful than the most powerful like Vespas and Lambrettas were back in like the 60s and 70s. Just a little bit above that. They make some ones that have a little bit, pistons, two-stroke pistons with some better airflow and like really generous port timings that make that possible for not too much work that you can just do in your garage. And this is also, by the way, replacing every oil seal in the motor and everything. I thought about replacing the gearbox. Oh, that's the other thing with stage 3. Sorry. Stage 3, you've increased your power 25%. You're probably going to not up your top speed very much unless you now buy a new transmission for your Harley Davidson or whatever other bike. Like by stage 3 on almost anything, you've probably exceeded the value of the motorcycle unless it was brand new. Just saying. What time are we at? What does it say?
Well, it says 152, but we're probably at like an
145,
hour. 145, yeah.
Yeah, we should just end it now. We don't have the sound effects. Let's just sing it out, Swigs, and then we'll do a tiki drink break and come back for the remainder of the episode.
Let's do it.
And I don't want to die. I just want to ride on my motor side. Cole. Ba-doop-ba-doop-doo.